This is your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. So we've talked a lot about chronic pain, of course, on this show, but we've also talked about how chronic pain can be caused by so many different things. And it's been an eye-opening experience for me with each episode that passes, that how much I learn about a new technique, a new or different type of trauma, which is just mind-boggling how many different types of things have happened to my guests and people that are talking to me that want to be guests on this show. And I'm learning so much about these new techniques and these traumas, but also about approaches to care for ourselves. Those of us that have been through some traumas that haven't been able to break free from them. And some of us don't even know that we needed to break free of them because their legs start to hurt or their elbow starts to hurt. Or they've got some weird something happening with, something happening with their brain, or their ears are ringing. I mean, there's so many strange little things that I've learned. And so much of them have come back from trauma. And, no one's pain is the same as another's. And I want to make that abundantly clear because I do not feel for one moment that my pain is more severe than anybody else's, because we all experience pain differently and we all need to honor and respect the pain and the traumas that are surrounding us. In fact, I've got people that are in my life that they'll be hanging out with me or what have you. And they're like, God, my girlfriend, she just had surgery on her hand and she's a massage therapist. And she's like, oh, my hand hurts so bad. And then she apologized to me for complaining about being in pain. And I'm like, knock it off. I'm happy that you're in pain. Somebody else is in pain. No, I'm kidding. But, no, please talk about it. Get it out, no matter how big or how small. Because if you don't, it's going to sit there. And if we keep pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down, then we're going to be stuck with it for longer than we might expect ourselves to be stuck with it, which kind of leads me to aging. Some days I feel like I'm aging much faster than I should be. I mean, we're all aging, obviously, but in fact, my sister sent me a message on Instagram the other day, and it was from someone that we follow on social media, and it was a funny sign. It said, I thought growing old would take much longer than this. And it is a true reminder of we are, even though we're living longer than we used to, don't we hear so much more about our aches and our pains and our ilks and our this and our that and all of that? Feel like we're all just drugging and sludging along. And I want to reverse that for so many people in my life, including myself. And I'd like to age more gracefully than I am and in far less pain. And my guest today is going to help reassure us that we can do that. And we can get through our pain no matter how large or small, and that it's not all up in our head, So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you my guest today, Kathy White. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Lyndsay. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm so glad to see you today. She is coming from us. She is a yoga instructor, and she has developed a joint renewal system after she entered menopause, when she saw that her old way of doing things in yoga and her self-care was no longer working for you. And she's going to come to us with her unique perspective on pain and trauma and the healing power of yoga to help us with this aging thing, of course, as well as helping to create, or at least talking to us about how we can create new neurologic pathways to calm our nervous systems. And I'm in. Sign me up for calming my nervous system. So I'd like to start today with talking about what happened to you with the birth of your first child and kind of what happened to you after that, and then how you found yoga because of it.
Yeah, that goes back to the beginning of my yoga journey. I'd done a few yoga classes and kind of gravitated more towards that sort of movement rather than, I was in my 20s, in the 80s when aerobics was all the fashion.
Jane Fonda in her thong, like exercise outfits.
Like, nah, that's not for me, not for me. But yeah, tragically, I lost my first child. He was stillborn. Basically, it was unexpected. It was an emergency C-section, but his heart rate was still going pretty fine. And then the doctor did this last scan of the baby, and it was still all looking good. And then they opened me up and took the baby out, and he never breathed outside of the womb. So that tragedy, that moment in time, really got frozen in my body. And the trauma of that, the shock of that, everyone in the operating theater was just in shock. Like, what just happened here? Because normally with that kind of event, tragedy, there's some precursors, there's something that goes. A lot of women really horrifically give birth to babies who've already died in the womb prior to that, and and none of them are easy or whatever. But it was the fact that we had the moment of elation. They lifted the baby out, said, "It's a baby boy," and it's like, "Yeah, baby boy, newborn." And those of you who have had the experience of being at a birth, or can imagine that experience, it's like such a joyful, amazing, incredible, life-enhancing moment. And then it was gone. And then it's like, "I'm sorry, we can't revive your baby." They tried and tried for about 10, 20 minutes. And so my body shut down. I was numb. I was depressed. I was like, well, what's the point? What do I do now? I had my whole life mapped out, as you do. You envision something and go, okay, this is me. Here I am into mumhood, and I'm going to do this path. And it's like, nope, no, you're not. Well, what do I do? And I was just really stuck. So fast forward about 3 months, a friend of mine said, "Come on, Kath, get off that couch." I mean, she didn't say, she said it much nicer than that. But
that's pretty nice, because I would have said it differently.
You come to a yoga class. So I went to this yoga class, and something in me in that yoga class just remembered that I was alive and there was life within me, even though I'd given birth to death, which is kind of a strange thing to say, but that's how it felt, and all the trauma that was lodged in my body, major operation, stitching me up with this stress of having just lost a child, and all of that locked in. So the psychological pain, Lyndsay, was just extraordinarily great. And the physical pain was such that my body just shut down. I just wasn't functioning very well. So that was my beginning of really understanding the healing power of yoga. And it just went on from there. And I subsequently gave birth to 2 other children who I managed to have vaginal deliveries with, which is unheard of when you've had a C-section. The medical profession just goes, "No, you can't do that. You can't do that." And I did, and I convinced the consultants, like, because I had yoga in my body and I felt so confident. Like, I can do this. And even my yoga teacher at the time of my second child, his birth, my yoga teacher was my doula. She came in and supported me.
That's awesome.
Just awesome. So really, yoga took me through my healing, my journey. So then when I got to perimenopause and I started to ache, and my back was sore, my knee was out, my shoulders were stiff, just all sorts of different body symptoms of menopause or perimenopause. And I was like, hang on a minute, this ain't right. Yoga's helped me. Yoga's saved me. Yoga's been my lifeline.
Yeah.
And now it's failing me. There was this almost like a sense of betrayal. Like, how come? So I got a little desperate, and I became a bit of a yoga junkie. And, and I say that with all due respect to people who have addiction issues.
Disclaimer on this.
But because what we're doing is we're seeking. We're desperately seeking. That's what, just we all are desperately seeking. And at this point in my life, I was desperately seeking a solution. It's like there must be something. And I was so true to yoga. It's like there must be something within the yoga world. Because I could have, just gone to a physiotherapist or a chiropractor or, different healing modalities, started doing more massage therapy, whatever. But it was like, no, I'm going to find something in yoga that works. And thankfully, I did. I found an amazing teacher down in Brazil, of all places, Francisco Cayute, and I started training with his method. And then from that, developed this, what I call the Joint Renewal System.
That's awesome. So what does this Joint Renewal System, what is it about? Can you talk about the differences from what you were doing before than what you're doing now? Because I definitely know that there's a lot of people that do yoga, including myself, that are my joints are a complete disaster, especially because I've made compromises in other places of my body to be able to continue to walk, and even if it's short distances, because, if I don't use them, I'm going to lose them. That's my whole line. And I'm curious because my joints hurt like crazy and my right knee's a mess because I walk on the outside of my feet because I roll out and I drive funky. I mean, it's just, I'm a mess. I am a mess, Kathy. But I'm just curious because we are aging and some of us feel like we're aging faster than others. And in the chronic pain community, there aren't a lot of people that have this uplifted spirit like yourself and mine. It took me a while to get here because I wasn't always like, wow, this is awesome. What a blessing CRPS and pain is. But I'm at that place right now because I don't like the other place. The other place sucks and I'm not going to live there. Forget that.
The first thing I would say, Lyndsay, is that the approach that's different about this is I was taught this back in the day, and many yoga teachers will echo this. It's like, if you feel pain as you're practicing, then back off, right? Don't go into pain. Well, that is a mistake because, and I can see where it comes from. It comes from like, don't injure yourself. And of course you don't want to injure yourself. But then it makes me think, and this is what we should consider. What kind of practice are we teaching that people can injure themselves in it? That's bonkers. Right? We need to be teaching practices that are entirely safe.
Yeah, this isn't jackass yoga.
Just put your finger up here, your head up here, just move it's like, what are you trying to do to the body, to manipulate the body to get into shapes? For what reason? There's no reason. So that's the first thing. It's like, so when we approach the body with kindness and we encounter pain, then there can be a curiosity and say, oh, what is this pain? Can I hang out with this pain for a little bit and make friends with it? Because ultimately, we all have pain in different places in our body, some more chronic than others or whatever. If we can't hang out and make friends with it, we're going to have a huge amount of resistance. We're going to hate our pain. We're going to hate ourselves. We're going to hate what caused it. And that psychological burden, that emotional burden of that weight is pain in itself. That's another layer of pain. So you've got this suffering on top of what actually might just physically be something biomechanical. So if you can sit with this sensation, and I tell my students, don't call it pain. Don't call it pain. Just call it sensation and be curious. Is it hot? Is it cold? Does it searing? Is it sharp? Is it, does it have edges? Where does the pain start? Where does it finish? What happens over time when you stay with it? Can you breathe into it? So we're just exploring the somatic experience of the sensation itself. And we're doing that through very, very basic yoga moves. And we're holding poses for a good length of time. So that's the first thing, is like, don't approach the body thinking, oh, yoga's going to make me feel all, flowy and floaty. And, I'll stop the moment I get a difficult sensation. It's like, no. yoga is going to calm your nervous system because you're going to build resilience to be able to address and face those restrictions, blockages, and obstacles in the body and in the mind, because they might be, where did they start? Who knows? One or the other.
Yeah,
But
no kidding.
they're showing up as something, as some stiffness, some rigidity, and we're just exploring and investigating them.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. And I agree with that way because with, I've done a lot of different types of yoga, and some of them I'm, to your point, I'm like, what are you trying to do to my body? I'm not going to use the name of the place. It's a chain, it's a franchise. And I did one class there and I could not believe what they had turned yoga into. And I'm like, if I wanted to go to a spin class, I would have gone to a flippin' spin class. It's like this loud music and they're shouting at you and they're trying to get you to do all this stuff. I'm like, whoa, hold the phone. I came here to kind of get in touch with myself and not die here today. I couldn't do it. I ended up just stopping and laying there, and because I am going to hurt myself if I try to then push it, keep going. You can do it. And I get that about some types of athleticism. I am not of that ilk. I am just not. I'm not trying to be a defense player in the NFL. All right. I'm just trying to heal and soothe a little bit. But I like that not calling it pain and calling it a sensation. And I like that you use that because that's a much better way of saying, oh, that is so much pain. So much pain. It is. It is painful.
Because pain is such a big, broad stroke thing. And it's not they don't say pain. I mean, it's a really important marker. But it's to be curious with it. It's like, let's go into it. Let's explore, where does it end? And also to notice that, as you focus on your feet and you're exploring what's going on in the feet and how the feet are feeling a little bit smaller, whatever, and your focus and your mind is there in the feet and finding that, you don't feel your arm in that moment.
I just closed my eyes and did exactly what you told me to do. My arm just I wasn't even thinking about it. I was thinking about my right foot. Yeah.
Yeah. So that ability to then you're actually giving yourself little pockets of pain relief. Because even if you are in pain all over your body, then it's like, okay, well, let me just go into the hip and I'm going to be really, really curious. I'm just going to be with that hip sensation. Then the rest of the body is out of your awareness. It's not firing. You're not triggering those pain responses. Whereas if you've just got the broad brushstroke of I'm in pain all over, it's like it's so global that it's very hard for you emotionally to cope with that as well.
Yeah, and in fact, I've had to remove myself from some people in the pain community because they are their pain. I just have this rare disease. I am not CRPS. I will not fall into that hole of it.
Yeah.
And I started to. And as soon as I started to, some people in my life were catching me. They're like, whoa, we got to pull you back because you are CRPS right now and you cannot go down that road because then you're going to be miserable and that's going to be your entire life. That's it.
Yeah.
My whole body, head to toe, I'm in pain. That's it. All right. So now I'm going to bitch and complain about it. And I'm really not going to do anything about bitch and complain about it. And so for me, I was like, well, I can bitch and complain, but I can do it in a much healthier way by A, doing this show, B, finding people like you that give different terminology. Because if we put pain is a different word than sensation. It is. I mean, it just is. The way we speak and the way we think is so powerful. Ugh. It's so powerful. If you wake up in the morning, you're like, I don't want to do this today. Well, guess what? You're not going to want to do it today.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, you're right or you're wrong.
Exactly.
So the other thing about the practice I teach, and just to say about the nervous system and healing, is that if there is any potential for healing, which I believe everybody has, everybody, that potential for healing is only activated when you're resting, when you're in a calm, when your sympathetic nervous system is in the parasympathetic. And that comes from resting, from deep breathing, from calming the mind, from being relaxed, from being so, your yoga class that you referred to, I mean, it's terrible to even call it yoga, really. Your athletic gym class that called itself yoga, unfortunately, that was just not going to give you any kind of healing response, right? So,
yeah, it made me feel way worse.
it's
And
absolutely.
also made me feel kind of stupid. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. Like that, because I did come from doing some beautiful yoga work.
Yeah. And, it's like, I just wish, like, those classes, I'm sure they're brilliant. I mean, they're not for me, I know that, but I'm sure they're brilliant for people who go to them. And I'm sure the teachers are wonderful people. I don't want to decry what people
No,
are doing.
no, it
I
just
just
wasn't.
wish that they didn't call it yoga, because yoga for me is very much about, first and foremost, calming the nervous system down. Then it's about connecting to the body, the brain, the spirit, the emotions. Like the root of yoga, it means to yoke, to connect, to join, to link. So that's the practice. We're just connecting all the bits together. And all those forgotten bits and all those bits that we wish weren't there and all those painful bits that we want to get rid of, we're going, no, bring them home, bring them home, bring them home. Let's be with them as we're on our mat. And we meet them and we greet them and we're kind to ourselves. And that's what yoga is. So the actual positions, the shape you get into, yes, of course, there's a lot of biomechanical wisdom and knowledge for sure. I mean, the teacher I've been working with for the past 5 years trained as a chiropractor. So he knows his stuff, and I've learned from him the biomechanics of everything. But ultimately, that's just almost secondary to actually what the whole system needs, which is just to be in a place of rest. Like you said about your trip in Europe that you just came from. It's like
Oh my gosh.
you just need to rest, right? You're sick, you go to bed, even if it's a non-inexpensive river cruise. You're in bed.
Right. So what my sweetie and I went over the holidays, we went on a trip to Europe and we went to Barcelona and to France. And in the middle of our like land on each bookend of the trip was this river cruise. There were like 50 people on this thing. And we got so incredibly sick, we basically slept in our cabin for 7 days straight. And I was telling Kathy before we started today that it was a very expensive nap. But I was talking to him on the boat. I was like, this is absolute proof of how much stress is in our life. We finally get away and we can't even enjoy it. And we slept through half of our trip because we were so sick. I mean, we were just fatigued beyond fatigue. Like I particularly, and for me, I go and I go and I go and I go and I push through. I could not. It was like I got up to take a shower. I'm like, not happening. My body says no. And I had to really, it was a good time for me to reflect on all of the people I've spoken to over the past, half of a year for this show as well, to really start listening to some of the messages that my journaling and some of the things that I was doing and these takeaways that I've had, and really spend some time with a lot of them and reflect. I even listened to some of my episodes again and was like, oh man, I missed the mark on that one. And it was a really good healing process, even still, because it was doing what you're talking about. I was listening to the sensations that were going on in my body. I was listening to my body, which was saying, just rest, Lyndsay, just rest.
Yeah, just
do
rest.
it. Just do it. Don't force yourself, Plus, it was all rainy and gross and cold. And so it was like, great.
Oh, great. Just rest. So that's really what yoga for me, I like to see it as an oasis of calm in somebody's day. And, when I try and describe it as that, because I try and encourage my students to have a daily practice if they can. And if you see it not as like, oh, I got to work out, got to go to the gym, got to do my yoga practice in that category, if you put it in this entirely different category of mindful movement, an oasis of calm, a place where I do my daily restoration and renewal, then there's more motivation. The why of doing your yoga becomes different from the why of going to the gym. And so that is, equally going to the gym. Don't stop going to the gym, please. But it has a different. It's not like an add-on. It's actually something separate. It's something entirely different in terms of motivation of why you're doing it. To really calm the nervous system. And man, oh man, in this crazy world we live in, more than ever, we need to collectively calm our nervous systems. The rates of depression and anxiety and just craziness that people are doing. We're all running around, and then the stress of living in the political environment, the climatic disasters that are happening around us, all of it. It's like, okay, can I have an oasis of calm? Can I have my yoga practice, please?
I love that you have pulled that out of the gym, because I think that is, yoga is good for your body from a fitness perspective, for your muscles, for your strength, of course. But I like that you separated it, because I've never been a gym person. I just, germs, that's on me. But I'm just never been like the person that goes in and wants to go lift weights and wants to go I've just never been that person. I was always in dance and theater and more graceful things to do. And I think that some of that got lost. Like you said, everybody doesn't have to be in a pretzel. And yoga can be intimidating too, because you see, especially with Instagram yoga, I think is what you may have called it.
Yes.
How we see all of these women that are just like holding their leg up above their head and they're like in a shape of a moon. And all of us are like, my God, there's no way I can do that. I'm not even going to try it.
Exactly. It's a reflection of our culture, really, in the sense that we're so driven by what things look like, an image and brand and all of that. And I think that, of course we want things to be aesthetically, pleasing to the eye. But then when it comes to yoga, it's the shape that matters. It's not the shape that matters. It's what it feels like inside and what experience you're having with that feeling. It's you meeting yourself. That's it. And so, when people come to my classes for the first time, they say, well, where's your mat? Which is your mat? And they're really surprised, because I say, no, you don't see me do yoga. I do yoga on my own at home and nobody watches me. Occasionally, like I'm just about to do a challenge and I'll be on video and I'll show my body moving. But generally for my general classes, I don't demonstrate, because what's the point of you seeing my body that has 25 years of yoga teaching almost in it, 30 years of yoga practice in it? What's the point of you seeing my body move when you've never been on a yoga mat before?
Wow, I love this. This is the first time I've ever heard, because you always see the yoga instructor and you're watching and they're like, oh gosh, I think I need to do this totally different.
Exactly. And what that does is it takes you out of your own body and you're looking at somebody else as your benchmark. It's like, well, that's not right, because you are your own benchmark. You've got to meet your body where it is, with its restrictions, with its pain, with its difficulties. That's where you are today.
I love that. Oh my God, I love that so much. And there's always that person in the class that they're always in the front row and they come in and they put their little bottle down and they start doing their stuff ahead of time. I'm like, this is my first time here.
Exactly. And most of my classes, my students come in, they close their eyes and they keep their eyes closed for the majority of the class. They're not looking at anyone else. They're not looking at me. They're not looking, and they can do that. They can really make it a mindful, moving meditation.
Do you do virtual classes where?
I do Zoom classes. So
okay.
What I do at the moment is hybrid classes. So, during the pandemic, I went all Zoom. Then when the pandemic ended, I was like, well, what am I going to do with I picked up a bunch of Zoom students who are living all over the world. What am I going to do with them now my studio's back open? Well, I'll bring them in the studio. So I put a big TV screen up in my studio.
Oh, how neat.
And I have my Zoom students as well as my studio students all at once. So it's a hybrid class now. So that's one of the gifts of the pandemic for me was.
Hey, I'll tell you, I was, before we close, because I know we're running out of time, but when we got back from LAX, I don't have my global entry. I have my TSA pre-check, but since I'm in a wheelchair for part of my life, I obviously have to use the wheelchair traveling and going through airports and so on and so forth. And we're in LAX and we're going through customs and all this. And the customs gal was like, oh, you've already been pre-approved to do global entry. It's downstairs. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, how long do you think it's going to take? Oh, it could take up to 2 hours. I was like, oh no. And so I'm like, I'm going to just roll and I'm going to try. There was nobody in line. And I went and I got there and I was so calm and so happy with the fact that I was going to be able to travel with more ease. And we got to talking about like just traveling with handicapped people and the pandemic itself and how I'm choosing to use things that have come from the pandemic to be more positive. Because while we were going through the questionnaires, I was asking him, was like, because my sweetie's up for a renewal. And I'm like, does he have to come down here to LAX to do it? She goes, no, they'll do it on Zoom. One of the many benefits that we've gotten from the pandemic is cutting out a lot of that extra noise that we don't necessarily need. And I think that if we can all look at some positive things that have come from it, but this isn't about the pandemic, people, but it is about kathywhiteyoga.com.
Thank you, Lyndsay.
Which I want you all to go to because you're so beautiful. And I love you. We have so many things to talk about offline because she and I talk about a bunch of other stuff that might be coming down the pike for you. So you got to keep listening. But her ability to get through things and to talk about healing with ways that are with humor and lightheartedness as well. Because we talk about a lot of heavy stuff on this show. And I applaud you for getting through so much of your heaviness in the way in which you have. And it's brought you to where you are today, which is coming into my life and to our listeners' lives as well. So thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Lyndsay. Yeah, just absolutely delight to be here. And just to say to your listeners that if you're thinking about doing yoga, great, come find me. But, whoever you're looking for in terms of a teacher, keep looking. There are lots of really, really excellent yoga teachers out there. If you go to a class and you don't like the teacher or you don't like their style of yoga, don't think that is yoga. Keep going. If it takes you 10 classes, if it takes you 100 classes to find the right teacher, there is someone out there that you will just click. And this can be a practice for life. It's yoga for longevity. You want to be practicing yoga when you're 80, 90, 100 so that you can keep going.
I love that. Thank you so much. You are exclusively invited to share this oasis of calm in this VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Please follow the Pain Game podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. And don't forget to give the show a review while you're there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.